Now the question of minerals, no, we have no problem with the DRC minerals. Rwanda has we have our own minerals. Maybe the challenge DRC has is that as much as we may not have as much, there is a visible impact on how we use what the little we have. So if democracy that my brother is telling me about produces what we see in the DRC, then that's not the type of democracy Rwanda wants.
Of Congo, the representative of Democratic Republic of Congo has requested for the floor to make a further statement.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, thank you for giving me the floor again. I could have remained, as what we said earlier was quite clear, but faced with the distortions of my colleague from Rwanda, I'm forced to take the floor again. If this organization of the United Nations respected the Charter as it was drafted in 1945, Rwanda, which invaded the territory of another country, might not even be allowed to sit here in this chamber next to us, because the goal of the founders of this organization was to make sure that war never happens again. This country invaded the territory of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. They have their troops on the territory of the DRC. They kill every day. This morning in Bukavu, hundreds of young men were guided to an undisclosed location, probably also with the goal of ethnic cleansing. But you speak of hate rhetoric. You who are on the territory of another country, you dare to speak of hate rhetoric. You're afraid of hate rhetoric while you're massacring the population of another country on its territory. Even MONUSCO has suffered loss of lives caused by Rwanda. A country like that has the right to sit in the Security Council and speak of hate rhetoric? What is the hate rhetoric compared to thousands of people killed on the territory of my country? What is hate rhetoric compared to a genocide carried out by a member state of this organization? Mr. President, he also spoke of the FDLR. What is the FDLR? The FDLR are Rwandans. To organize an inter-Rwandan dialogue, to discuss among yourselves. You don't even have democracy in your country. There's no democracy in Rwanda. All the opponents in Rwanda are outside of Rwanda. When they are in Rwanda, they're killed or assassinated. In Congo, our opponents remain in Congo. We engage in discussion. We have democracy, even if we can't compare it to Western democracies. But it does exist. Where's democracy in Rwanda? Where's the Rwanda democracy? Show me a single opponent who is in Rwanda. Opposition politician. So when you speak of hate rhetoric or whatever, it's completely ill-placed. Now, speaking of FDLR, these are Rwandans, as I said. If Rwandans want peace with the FDLR, then why don't you discuss among yourselves, among Rwandans? This is taking place in the east of the DRC. And who's occupying the east of the DRC? It's the Rwanda and M23. And we have said that we will contribute to this dismantlement of DLR. That is the essence of the Washington Agreement, because we want peace. But to come here for them to say that everything hinges on the FDLR. That's false. They are exploiting minerals of the DRC. We consider that the grave violations of human rights being committed in the east of the DRC it is Rwanda that is responsible for it. It is an aggressor country, and it should be considered as an aggressor country based on the charter. We are dealing with an aggressor who comes here with arguments that are completely worthless. How many times has he spoken of FDLR or hate rhetoric? And this is a country that has invaded our territory. I'll stop there.
I thank the representative of Democratic Republic of the Congo. Now I give the representative of Rwanda has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I'd like to remind this is your final statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I will make good use of your time. Indeed, the FDLR are Rwandans, and in Rwanda is where they should be. And this is what we're asking for DRC to do. In 1994, after they had committed the genocide, almost the equal number of perpetrators and others left Rwanda to Tanzania. But because Tanzania handled the situation in a right way, we do not have a problem now with Tanzania. You have that history. You were involved through UNHCR you saw the process, how they were disarmed, settled in camps, and later on repatriated back to Rwanda. The problem we have with the DRC is they chose the opposite direction, to arm them, reorganize them, continue to support them until now. And we have a report 31 years later that says they even have strongholds in the DRC. So that is the problem. It's not about whether they are Rwandese or they are not. These are people, Rwandans, yes, who killed our people, who want to continue killing. The intent, they still have that genocidal intent. And who should not be there, who should be neutralized. Now, the question of minerals, no, we have no problem with the DRC minerals. Rwanda has we have our own minerals. Maybe the challenge DRC has is that as much as we may not have as much, there is a visible impact on how we use what the little we have. So if democracy that my brother is telling me about produces what we see in the DRC, then that's not the type of democracy Rwanda wants.
I think the statement. There are no more names inscribed on my list of speakers. I now invite council members to...
Now, before these bold accusations, these are the speeches they made that fueled and resulted these bombshell accusations.
Now give the floor to the representative of Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, honourable members of the Security Council, ladies and gentlemen. On the last day of your presidency of the Security Council, it is a delight and an honour for me to congratulate you on a job well done throughout your month-long term. My delegation is very satisfied to have seen you chairing over this open meeting of the Security Council devoted to the consideration of the situation in my country, the DRC. I would like to use this opportunity to pay tribute to the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, for his sustained commitment to the restoration of peace in my country. Last but not least, if I may, I should like to express my gratitude to Ms. Bintou Keita, Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of MONUSCO. We're grateful for her edifying briefing this morning. My delegation has taken note of the Secretary General's report on the United Nations mission for the stabilization of the DRC, document reference S 2025-590, dated 19th September 2025. However, we'd like to recall that on the 22nd of August this year, at the emergency meeting convened at the request of the United States and Panama, a meeting on the situation in the DRC, unfortunately, the attention of the Council was drawn to three important points. First, the relentless atrocities and mass crimes committed in the east of the DRC, targeting civilian populations, as well as the humanitarian disaster, exacerbated day in, day out by attacks waged by the RDF M23 coalition. Just this morning, hundreds of young people in Bukavu were taken en masse by the Rwandan army and its Forward Brigade, the AFC M23. They were taken to an unknown destination. Second, the non-compliance with relevant and clear-cut provisions of Resolution 2773, adopted unanimously on the 21st of February 2025 by this very Council. Provisions including the immediate and unconditional withdrawal of the Rwandan Defense Forces, the RDF, and their Forward Brigade in the DRC. That is the infamous AFC M23. I also mentioned the various peace initiatives launched under the auspices of the US and Qatar, initiatives which resulted on the 27th of June in Washington in the conclusion of a peace agreement between the DRC and Rwanda, as well as in the signing in Doha of a declaration of principles, a sort of roadmap, a preliminary roadmap paving the way for peace between the DRC and the AFC M23. Mr. President, today, the first message I'd like to convey is underpinned by the observation that for over 3 decades, the east of the DRC has seen atrocious war. Entire generations have grown up in the shadow of violence, large-scale displacement, sexual slavery, and the pillage of their native lands. The attack we have fallen victim to has plunged the provinces in the east of my country in a humanitarian disaster. Almost 7 million IDPs. A peak was reached in January and February of this year when the cities of Goma and Bukavu were invaded by the Rwandan Defense Forces and their Forward Brigade in the country, the infamous AFC 23. It's worth clarifying that the diplomatic process underway with all parties to the conflict does not in any way exclude the quest for justice and reparations. As reiterated by the President of the Republic, His Excellency Félix Antoine Tshisekedi Tshilombo, speaking from the High Rostrum of the 80th session of the General Assembly on the 23rd of September this year, and I quote, "The United Nations, through the mapping report, documented the scale of the atrocities being committed. It's not just a conflict. It's a silent genocide hitting the Congolese people, and this for over 30 years now. In July of this year, over 300 civilians, of which 48 were women and 19 children, were massacred in Rutshuru territory by the AFC M23 with the support of the Rwandan Defense Forces. Now, these are not isolated crimes. They are part and parcel of a macabre trend. I thank the United States of America for taking the initiative in June, in the previous month, in August, of convening an extraordinary session of the Security Council to consider the massacres documented by Human Rights Watch." End of quote. President, this is not solely a Congolese crisis. It's a stain on the collective conscience of humanity. Repeated cycles of atrocity, fueled by the avarice for strategic minerals, as well as foreign interference, principally that by Rwanda, reflect the cost of indifference and the price of impunity. With every crime that goes unpunished, with every time that we remain silent while there are new victims piling up, the door is being opened to new waves of violence. Recognizing the crimes that have been committed, preserving the truth for future generations, and ensuring accountability are not options. They are the very foundation of dignified and lasting peace. Today, as the world clamors for justice in other parts of the world, the voice of Congolese victims must also be heard, because no peace process can survive impunity. Protecting human life is a non-negotiable must. Standing idly by while such crimes are committed is tantamount to being complicit. The protection of human life of all communities is non-negotiable. It must be at the heart of our activities. The Security Council and the international community cannot remain indifferent as impunity takes root. The second message I'd like to convey follows on from the first. I'd like to reiterate the appeal launched on the 23rd of September, speaking from the High Rostrum of the General Assembly by his President of the DRC, His Excellency Félix Antoine Tshisekedi Tshilombo. And here I quote: "As preparations are underway for the establishment of an independent commission of inquiry by the Human Rights Council of the United Nations to look into the massacres perpetrated a few months ago by our attackers and their affiliates, and this in the east of the DRC, I'd like to launch a solemn appeal to the international community. The international community has a moral and political duty to support this key step and to establish the truth, to ensure justice is done for the benefit of the victims, and to lay the groundwork for lasting peace rooted in memory and shared responsibility." End of quote. President, to put an end to this conflict, the Security Council, through Resolution 2773, dated 21st of February of this year, demanded the withdrawal of M23 from Goma, Bukavu, and all of the areas under its control, as well as for the dismantling of parallel administrations established in violation of the sovereignty of the DRC, as well as the end of all support to the M23, whether that be direct or indirect. The Washington Accord and the Doha Declaration of Principles do something similar. They call for the withdrawal of Rwandan troops, the end to Rwandan support for the M23, and the restoration of state authority across all occupied areas. These are non-negotiables if we are to have genuine peace. The Security Council, a guarantor of the maintenance of international peace and security, must ensure that this agreement is painstakingly implemented. It is indissociable from the implementation of Resolution 2773. Until these decisions are executed, the blood of innocents will continue to flow. President, once again, I'd like to reiterate the comments recently made by His Excellency Félix Antoine Tshisekedi. The objective we pursue remains unchanged: to ensure just, lasting and verifiable peace, and not simply an ephemeral, fictitious lull in hostilities. What we need is true peace, not what we've had for 30 years, often disappointing our people. We expect the international community to be unswerving and courageous, to stand on the side of the law. This is the price of truth which will prevail over impunity, making peace possible. The DRC is a vibrant country with many natural riches and a wealth of human resilience. We want to contribute to global peace. But peace begins with recognizing the tragedy we've lived through. I solemnly call on this assembly to recognize the Congolese genocide, to support our battle for truth and justice, and to, at last, help us to build lasting peace in the heart of Africa. We ask for the United Nations to introduce a targeted sanctions regime, targeting the perpetrators of economic crimes and war crimes, crimes against humanity, as well as the crime of genocide committed in the east of my country. We call on the United Nations also to support all activities which can help break the illicit supply circuits involving minerals, which for decades have funded wars and human tragedies. The international community has a moral and political duty to recognize this tragedy for what it is, a genocide, and to take appropriate action. Silence and inaction in the face of such crimes are tantamount to complicity. We demand the immediate establishment of an independent international commission of inquiry that would be well-resourced so that it can establish the truth, do justice to the victims, and break the cycle of impunity which has been fueling this tragedy for decades. President, turning now to MONUSCO. My country's position has already been voiced on numerous occasions in this chamber. My government is in favor of entrusting MONUSCO with an operational role when it comes to verifying a future ceasefire and the implementation of the peace accords. We would like to emphasize the need for the Security Council to strengthen diplomatically, militarily, and financially MONUSCO so that it can fulfill its mandate, which will soon be renewed. We call on the Council to take decisions which will compel Rwanda and their associates, the M23 AFC, to not impede the freedom of movement of MONUSCO personnel. Such a posture is beneath a country which claims to be an exemplary troop contributing country of the United Nations system. President, before I conclude, I'd like to reiterate the requests my country has addressed to the Council so as to make headway on our agenda, that is restoring lasting peace rather than an ephemeral and fictitious peace. First, the Council should be able to, without delay, ensure the application of the 27th of June 2025 agreement signed between the DRC and Rwanda, which is now an indissociable part of the full, faultless implementation of the provisions of Resolution 2773 adopted this year. Second, we need the Council to strengthen the sanctions regime, adding AFC M23 commanders and Rwandan leaders on there. Third, immediate support for the effective implementation of an international commission of inquiry as per Resolution A/HRC/Res/S37/1 adopted on the 7th of February of this year at the 37th Extraordinary Session of the United Nations Human Rights Council. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Democratic Republic of the
And
Congo.
allow me to begin by commending you for your leadership, Mr. President.
Representative of Rwanda.
Thank you for giving me the floor. And allow me to begin by commending you for your leadership, Mr. President, of the Security Council this month. I also thank Madam Bintou Keita for her updates on the situation in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo and on the work of MONUSCO. Mr. President, as we meet today, since the signing of the Washington Agreement, Rwanda has engaged constructively in all follow-up meetings, including the following engagements. The Joint Oversight Committee has already met twice, on the 30th of July, on the 3rd of September, and will meet again on the 1st of October. Likewise, the Joint Security Coordination Mechanism has convened twice, on the 7th and the 8th of August in Addis Ababa, and on the 17th and the 18th of September in Washington, D.C. All these meetings are directed towards the operationalization of the Washington Peace Agreement, a process to which Rwanda remains fully committed. It is important to highlight that the Washington Peace Agreement is built on principles of peace and cooperation and establishes a joint security mechanism to build trust, along with measures to guarantee humanitarian access and the dignified return of refugees. Importantly, it also addresses many of the very issues that the Security Council has long grappled with, as reflected in numerous UN Security Council resolutions. In fact, some of refugees are already returning in Rwanda, and the mechanisms are in place to receive them. This process also addresses the Resolution 2773. And although I have been here before to talk about more than 20 more resolutions that were passed before it, and which this resolution did not repeal. I'm now singling out this resolution alone because issues are interconnected. And if it is addressed in the manner it is imported in the Washington Agreement, it will address all issues in the resolutions that came before it. Resolution 2773, as imported in the Washington Agreement, contextualizes the situation and creates a mechanism for its logical implementation. So indeed, if this council, which I believe supports the Washington Agreement, then you must also be able to support the process in which the Washington Agreement intends to implement this resolution. Similarly, the Doha process has represented a critical opportunity to address the endemic inter-Congolese challenges that have plagued the DRC for decades. The peace process provides a structured and inclusive framework for dialogue aimed at tackling the root causes of conflict, including issues of governance, exclusion, armed groups, and ethnic tensions. Rwanda sees hope in these efforts, but their success depends on full commitment and genuine political will from all parties involved. This is a one-time chance to bring lasting peace to the DRC, and the Security Council must lend its unequivocal support. We call on all parties to honor their commitments, engage constructively, and ensure that this process translates into concrete measures that will bring peace and address the underlying drivers of conflict in the Eastern DRC. I want to reiterate that Rwanda is fully committed to this process, and we shall implement it to the letter. Having reviewed the Secretary General's report under consideration today, I wish to share Rwanda's principal concerns, notably the underreporting of critical facts, the imbalanced portrayal of armed groups, the persistent and dangerous presence of the DRC-backed FDLR, and the implications for MONUSCO's future role as the peace agreement moves into implementation. I wanted to reiterate that the Washington Agreement creates a role for MONUSCO, and this requires that MONUSCO positions itself to implement this role in a constructive way. So the advice we are giving here is in that logic. While we value reporting, the latest report on Eastern DRC reflects troubling omissions. Chief among them is the failure to sufficiently address one of the most dangerous drivers of violence, and that is hate speech and identity-based persecution. I know in paragraph 79, the report talks about hate speech, but not sufficiently. Hate speech is something very dangerous. I have seen reports of the Security Council where you quote from the social media postings. Who has not seen hate speech in social media, in classrooms, in churches, where hate is taught to 10-year-olds? Who has not seen those posts? Only last week, some people were being tormented because they had a long nose. Those who know the history of the region know what it means, what a long nose means. It means death to some people. So this is not something that the report must refer to in passing. The report does not address the issue of mercenaries. There is a whole convention of the United Nations against the use of mercenaries. There are more than 2 Security Council resolutions against the use of mercenaries. There is the African Union resolution against the use of mercenaries. When did this council ever address the issue of mercenaries? There are mercenaries now. There were mercenaries before. When they were flushed out of the forests, everyone was there to see. Why is it that the Security Council treats this as a non-issue? And why is it that MONUSCO does not consider this as an issue? Why is Rwanda concerned? Because it is just across our border. Kinyarwanda-speaking Congolese communities, including Banyamulenge in South Kivu, are being singled out for expulsion and extermination. Again, who has not seen or who did not hear that there was an ultimatum given in Uvira for Tutsis to leave the country, a 10-day ultimatum. I met one senior official of the UN on the 8th day to ask why the UN had been silent all along. A commander of the army issues an ultimatum for the ethnic group to leave the country. Where was the emergency meeting to address that? Why is the UN until now silent about it? Is it normal that an ethnic group is ordered to leave the country of their origin to go to where they are perceived to believe, to belong? Because telling the truth is the only thing we can do here. And we will not tire repeating it and repeating it. Decisions will remain entirely yours. But the truth of the matters, we shall continue to tell. FDLR. FDLR, that is backed by the DRC government, has an origin in the force that killed 1 million Rwandans. It is the only genocidal group that remained in its military formation in known locations with the same intentions undisturbed for the period of 31 years now. There is not any other single group I know in the history that committed the genocide, remained in that military formation, kept their arms, regrouped, got supported, remained pursuing its intent for 31 years, and today the report says they have strongholds undisturbed. That is FDLR. That is discussed here as a non-issue. Actually, let me say something that you may not have to provide an answer for, but take time to reflect about it. FDLR is within FARDC, and it is known, it is in your reports. FDLR is assisted by the DRC government. It is there, it is known, it is in your reports. MONUSCO cooperates with the DRC government, with DRC army, knowing FDLR is within DRC army. And what MONUSCO does, and this is on record, is to avoid units and battalions in which FDLR is deployed. So which standard is that? That there is a formal military cooperation between a UN force and a government force that has a genocide force within it, as long as they are not kept in the same units. Formally, that is the position of MONUSCO. What does complicity mean if that is not complicity? MONUSCO knows FDLR units are within FARDC units. What they do is just avoid those. So you can use them elsewhere as long as we don't mix. But you are in the same efforts, same military efforts, same military campaign. How did it occur in the wisdom of this council to form that partnership against M23, against Rwanda? M23 are Congolese who are being expelled from their country. Rwanda is a country that suffered the genocide at the hands of FDLR, and which has suffered 21 more attacks after 1994. If 21 attacks by a non-state group supported by a state member to the UN, if it does not constitute the reason to activate Article 51 of the Charter, which justifies that? Which threshold exists? 21 attacks in the period of 31 years. If you wanted to know how many times FDLR has attacked Rwanda, look at how many travel advisories some of your countries have issued. Because every time they attack Rwanda, you advise your citizens not to go to that part of Rwanda. So you can just correct those advisories. You will know how many times FDLR has attacked Rwanda. And we are being advised to lift our defensive measures when FDLR has strongholds that Madam Keita is telling us. It happened once to us in 94. We took advice from preachers and hid in churches, and we were slaughtered like cows it will never happen again. Thank you very much.
The representative
Sons and daughters of our beloved Africa, having been inspired by the powerful and unapologetic voices at the UNGA, let us unite in reflection. What stirs in your hearts and minds? Smash that like button, join our Pan-African family by subscribing, and share your thoughts in the comments below to amplify our collective vision for a liberated and thriving continent.